Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, now's the time we're going to call the Newberg School Board meeting to open, and it is just to let folks know, we do have a quorum. We have a board member who's attending online, and Director Wolfer will be a few minutes late, but we will start the Pledge of Allegiance with Director Hayden.
I pledge allegiance, flag of the
United States of
America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, any revisions or additions, deletions to the agenda? No? Okay, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. So the new hires, we just have, it looks like we have the retirement and rehire of Janelle Almquist. And under donations, always very lovely to be able to thank folks for the Rotary Club of Newberg, $300 for the welcome back staff lunch, which I did see a lot of people post online, that a lot of gratitude about that. The Oregon Community Foundation, $5,500 for the Derek Robert Burton 55 Scholarship Fund at Newberg High School. And Loie Marsh Memorial Reading Fund for in the amount of $1,250 donation to Dundee. And I think Loie was a teacher at Dundee Elementary School, and just really appreciate the fact that she's still making a contribution. They're still making a contribution in her honor there. And then, of course, we had the board minutes and policy updates for that.
I got one note on the policy updates. There was one policy update. It was JFCEB, which is our cell phone policy. We're going to push it back to the policy committee. We noticed on the OSBA sample that when we changed it, there's some words missing that are important. So we were going to push it back to the policy committee. It meets next Tuesday, and then we'll put it back on the October 28th for its second reading. But we do want to discuss the fact that when we went from the OSBA sample to ours, there's some important words that are not in that, that OSBA is recommending. It's not a huge change, but it's a big enough one that I think we should talk about it in the policy committee first. So that's why it's not here.
Okay.
I move that the Newberg Dundee Public Schools Board of Directors approve the consent agenda as presented.
I will second.
Okay. And any further questions? I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Well, it's 6-5-0. 5-0. Thank you. Okay, this is our time for public forum. If there's anybody that is here that would like to speak. Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to reports and presentations. Jillian, it looks like you're up first.
Hi, y'all. While Jillian is transitioning up, can you all hear me okay? I just want a quick check.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Tonight we are going to present our Division 22 Standards Assurances for the 24-25 school year. This is just a reminder that these standards are about our compliance for the last school year. So you always report 1 year behind. Go to the next slide. So Division 22 standards are required as part of the Public Elementary and Secondary Schools Act. All of the standards are rules set out in OARs. And the Oregon legislature or the state board has determined that they must be in met in order to be a standard school district. So these are important standards for us. And then compliance with the rules ensures that we all have the same level of service across the state. Next slide. So the standards are broken into 5 different categories. We have high quality learning experiences, aligned and focused educational systems, engaged parents, partners, and communities, safe and inclusive schools, and committed and supported staff. And all of these categories also align with the categories that are found in our student success plan, so our integrated grants as well. The standards themselves have over 50 rules, and in terms of the actual accountability, our requirement as a school district is to report to our school board by November 1st each year of the prior year's compliance, as well as post them on our district website by November 1st. And then at the state accountability level, ODE requires all districts to submit their insurances by November 15th, and then ODE reviews all of the submissions as well. Next slide. So in terms of like the why of why we do this, it's part of our commitment to providing high quality educational experiences for our students. The standards basically articulate the minimums that we expect in terms of the educational services that students and our staff experience. It's not the ceiling, and it offers an opportunity for districts that might not be in compliance to reflect on areas of need and receive the technical assistance from ODE if that's required. So for our report for 24-25, go to the next slide, please. Out of the 59 standards, we are in compliance with 54 standards. 0 standards are out of compliance, and we are implementing approved correction action on 3 standards that I will talk through in just a moment. And then 2 standards are waived across the state for until 2027, 2028, and I'll talk about what those are as well. So the first standard that we're implementing corrective action on is the human sexuality education standard. Grades 6 through 12 did meet this rule. Where we were out of compliance last year was in grades K-5. Last year, all students in grades K-5 did have lessons around Aaron's Law, which is part of the requirement, but we did not have a curriculum in place. So last year, Holly Mealy piloted, led up that program with the adoption committee, and the elementary teachers piloted a curriculum, and we purchased it, and it is now currently in place. So we will be in compliance for the 25-26 school year or the 24-25 school year next year when we report. The next area was around PE requirements. We were out of compliance here only at the elementary level. There were 115 minutes required for PE for elementary students, and in the past, the district was counting recess as part of the 150 minutes, and in reality, we had 80 minutes of PE. The recess activities at one point were in compliance, but are no longer because the activities are supposed to be structured and have specific requirements about who leads those, and that was not occurring. So last year, again with the leadership under Holly, we were able to put together a committee and make some recommendations around best practices for our district, and we have been able to increase the PE minutes from 80 minutes last year to 160 minutes this year. So all students receive their PE physical education instruction through a licensed PE teacher at every elementary building. So that's very exciting. So we were in compliance with that September 1st this year. So again, in terms of next year's report, that will also be in compliance. And then the last area that we're implementing corrective action in is the instructional materials adoption. We were in compliance in all areas except for science. We had sought a postponement for this. And so currently we are in the process of going through that science adoption team. The process was actually started last year, but paused due to some of the financial situations the district was in. So we've reconvened that team, and later this year, we hope to bring you a recommendation for adoption for the end of this year to be in place by next year, September 1st. Areas that are waived are the essential skills. The diploma requirement for essential skills has been waived again until 2027-28, along with the essential skill assessments for English language learners. And one of the areas that we have to work on here is that when these requirements become unwaived, if you will, or required, we will have to have a plan in place for how we will assess essential skills for our students that might be utilizing languages in addition to English. And so that is some work that the district will need to take on as we develop what those assessments might look like, because the state has some pretty specific requirements about how they're scored and who is deemed has all of the criteria to be able to score those and in the student's language of proficiency. And again, this is applicable to all public schools across the state. And then the last area that I wanted to share on is areas that we were not in compliance for 23-24. So the report that we did last year, that I presented last year, are now in compliance. And so we did not have to implement any more corrective action. And these are the educational leadership administrator standards, how administrators were evaluated, the comprehensive school counseling program. Our middle school program didn't have individual plans in place for students at the 7th and 8th grade levels. And so that's now in place. Our required instructional time was a bit short at Catalyst last year. And so now that has been adjusted, as well as the local performance assessment and getting those completed. And that was also adjusted last year as well. So those 4 areas are back in compliance after being reported out of compliance in the prior year. Any questions on our Division 22 standards assurances?
Like to see everything being back to normal, which is great. I think we asked this. I probably even asked this last year, but I can't remember the answer. When we're out of compliance and we're asking for whatever, do we just tell them that we're our action plan, or do we have to get approval and they have to sign off on it?
Yeah, so as part of the process, basically after it's presented to the board, there is a form that the district needs to complete that gets submitted to ODE, and then ODE approves it. So if an area is out of compliance, as part of that process, the district has to suggest what corrective action they will take to get back into compliance, and then ODE will approve that. Sometimes there's follow-up questions from ODE on some of the details of like, how are you going to do this? And they may ask follow-up questions. And then ultimately they do approve it, and then we are responsible for implementing that corrective action.
Yeah, thank you.
And then as part of our process, we ensure that like, yes, we've met it. So like when I submit our plan this year, I will be saying, here are the pieces that we've implemented that are now back in compliance.
For the 2 that are currently waived, the essential skills, when those become required, and I assume in the past things have been waived and then become required again, is that something that we get, what's the lead time on it? Is like in 2028 this is going to be required, or is it like surprise in the fall?
So right now, the waived it's expected to be implemented in the 27-28 school year. So with the essential standards, this was basically the graduation requirement. So it's our work samples. We're already doing this at the high school level. So this is not an issue for us. So when and if ODE decides to continue to implement those, we have all those work samples already ready to go and in place. It's just now reporting that, yes, it's in compliance. What we don't have, though, is those work samples in multiple languages. So that would be work for the district to do. And so far, ODE has continued to push this. So like last year, that waived date wasn't 27-28, it was 26-27. So it seems to continue to be pushed. But that is their warning system of like, this is the year we're going to expect you to have it in place.
Is there a reason why we're not working on that if we are now?
We are making strides to work on it. Last year was the first year that the essential standards for English language learners came out. And so that is exactly what we are grappling with now to ensure that we'll be ready for compliance when those become effective.
Awesome, thank you.
Just a point of clarification on that. One, the primary way students fulfill that requirement is actually through their OSAS test, not through work samples. Work samples is one way that they can show that. But I don't know what the status of that actually is with ODE at this point, but I know it won't be required before 27-28.
Thanks, Andy.
Any further questions or comments? Thank you. I know this has been a lot of work and a lot of stress, and you guys have done a great job. So thank you for getting us into compliance. is very much appreciated.
I will say the P, I got it. I'm on this time. That just have it right there. Yeah. I will say again, the PE requirements and actually pushing in the PE FTE to comply with that, which not many districts are doing. I'm seeing lots of interesting impacts from that. Just kids having more activity, teachers have more prep. So that's been a really interesting one for us to watch. And again, we appreciate the work that we did with our union and kind of, there were some contractual elements that they gave back and that we gave to also make that FTE happen. So it was a good collaboration between both groups to kind of get to that solution. So that one I'm particularly interested in kind of how that plays out.
Dave, could you talk a little bit about the FTE changes that came about because of that requirement? Or coming back into compliance, I should say?
Yeah, I can talk generally. I don't have the exact numbers, but the basic gist was built into the contract was 12 hours of prep time for classroom teacher for all elementary teachers. And we needed probably close to 3 FTE to make this whole thing work and it's been changed a little bit because as we've done it, some schools have needed a little bit more. So we've been kind of fine tuning it this fall. But basically we worked with the union for an MOU where they would give back that money that we were already investing in some prep. And we invested it with some additional FTE to get the final number that we needed for PE. So again, we couldn't have done it alone. And so both groups kind of giving up some is how we got to this place. Does that help, Andy?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I just was curious about, we're doubling the amount of class time. So I know that's got FTE impact. I just didn't know how many additional teachers were, teaching PE this year from previous years.
I feel bad. I don't have the exact numbers. I'll look it up though, and I can get it to you. But my memory here is that we started at about 2, and I think we're at about 3 total. And not every school doubled. Some schools, but a lot of schools got pieces to kind of finish out. We weren't at total capacity on our PE teachers to begin with last year, so there was space for the 1.0 that was already at the building to pick up some of those minutes. But it just went building to building, to be honest.
Great, thank you.
So 2.4. Okay. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions for Jillian? Oh, all right, thank you. And so Holly, I think you are going to come up now and
So next meeting, I will be seeking a motion to approve our assurances so that I can submit those to ODE.
All right. Good evening, everyone. We're going to be talking about our local assessments this evening. And what local assessments are is not OSAS, which is the state assessments. So we're looking at in the first 3 weeks of school, what does the data show us of where they are in terms of the grade level that they're at? So let's just kind of walk this through. One of the terms that you're going to hear, we shorten beginning of year to BOY. So don't be confused. There's no boys running rampant. What is a diagnostic? So when we talk about those first 3 weeks of school, we give what we call a diagnostic, and it's like a dipstick. So it's brief, low stakes. Almost everything is done through our 3 main means of diagnostic work. For K-5 literacy, we use M-Class, and they're using the tool called Dibbles to take that quick dipstick. For the math portion of K-5 testing, we use iReady. And then for dual language, Lectura is used. And then for our 6-8, we have a brand new diagnostic this year that we're piloting. We love Star Renaissance. They let us do this for free this year. Shout out to them. And STAR data to us is new. So even though we know that it's measuring literacy, it's a composite of more things than we have looked at in previous years. And then for math, it's using iReady as well. So if a parent's at home and they hear M-Class iReady, especially as we're talking about conferences this week in the next few days, those are those dipstick measures that we're using to say this is where your kid is at compared to the grade level that they're in. Just as a side note, all of these are nationally normed, so they're valid, they're reliable tools for us to measure our students compared to the rest of the nation's students. So we're talking about as valid and reliable as information as we can get, but not every tool measures the same stuff. And so that's where there's a little bit of a difference. You can go to the next slide. Thank you so much, Nathan. When we talk about what's measured at literacy, so for K-5, that's your basic indicators of literacy: phonemic awareness, phonics, reading accuracy, fluency, comprehension at those basic grade levels. And then the subtests that they're challenged by adapt to what the kid shows at their skill level. So it drills down a little deeper in all of those areas to give a pretty complete picture of where that kid is in terms of literacy. For 6-8, it's different because there's different skill sets by the time we get to 6-8. So it's looking more at the deeper understanding and unpacking of reading comprehension, vocabulary, and other reading skills, decoding skills at those appropriate grade levels. And again, it's adaptive, so it's drilling down into where is this kid's true literacy level based on their grade level. So this is our school data from across the whole district. This is at every grade level. This isn't by school, this is by district. So what you'll see are the values of each. And what's most important is if you take the blue and the green, which I now realize I should have added together for you to visually see a little bit better, but we're within 4 percentage points of where last year's OSAS scores placed our kids. So our measures are actually correlated, probably not perfectly, and I know we're going to chat with Andy in a bit on this, but at least it gives us an indicator of what this really means for progress to OSAS. So, of course, last year's third graders are this year's fourth graders. So you can see the 60% was theirs. Oh, I do have it up there. Third grade right now is sitting at a 60%. We don't have a second grade OSAS, so you don't have nothing to compare that to. But at fourth grade, we're sitting at grade level benchmark being on target at 61%, and our OSAS scores showed almost 50%, 49.6. Grade 5, 62%, and our OSAS at 57.8%. So again, correlated, but not perfectly, gives us a sense that our kids are coming in with the majority being at grade level, which is super exciting for us. But if we go to the next slide, to understand what does this mean when you're not in the world of literacy, there's some measures that we look at specifically. The composite scores, all of those scores together showing at grade level, where do these kids fall? But another key indicator is their fluency score. So how fluidly are they reading through and decoding and knowing those sounds as they're going, reading line by line. And those measurements are what give us a sense of what their true proficiency levels are. There's always limitations with the tool that you're using. So again, this tool is Dibbles. There's limitations of what's scoring, but definitely is giving us a good sense of where our kids are at. So at our middle schools, this is the new data tool that we're using. And again, it's called STAR Renaissance. It is showing us fantastic data of where our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are, which is why you guys have 3 slides that look very similar. So if you want to go through them, what you'll see is that definitely the majority of our students are at or near benchmark, which is the green and the blue. The yellow and the red are showing us the kids that are a grade level below, which is yellow, and multiple grade levels below, which is red. Those kids, and you'll see that those numbers, those kids are doing amazing, phenomenal work for whatever reason. Maybe they're new arrivals to us. Maybe they have been challenged with basic literacy struggles their whole academic life, but those are the kids that now we can see really, really clearly and put interventions in place. And we look at kids in the red or even the yellow, sometimes we're talking about tier 3 interventions, meaning they're getting double dose of support, but we're trying to figure out and drill down, what can we do for you this year to get you to approach grade level more quickly than what they've been realizing in the classroom. But that blue area is also the life-giving area for us. We know that those kids are so very close to being at grade level and proficient readers, which is super exciting. So that's our middle school. This is our benchmark information from iReady on math. And this is our whole population, K-8, where our kids fall. And the red is in the multiple grade levels below. The yellow is in a grade level below, and then the green and then the stripy green is at the grade level or exceeding into the grade level in ahead of them, that they're ahead in their math scores. And then those are the main domains that are tested: numbers and operations, algebra and algebraic thinking, measurement and data, and then geometry. Those are the 4 pools that get tested in this math dipstick for kids. And then in the next slide, you'll see, if you look at the bold percentages, right now, 64% of our 3rd graders across our whole district are already grade level proficient. They are on target to be proficient for their grade. That is awesome. If you look down at 8th grade and you see 22%, the number of students tested is circled for you because our students in the accelerated track at CV and at MV sometimes do not do that first diagnostic. They use every single moment of their first days in class. These kids tend to be tested really often. And so we only do the diagnostic in the middle of the year for this year. So they're not even accounted for. And they're some of our highest achieving math students. So this, just to call out, grade 8 is very skewed data. And we'll probably bring a better picture to you when we look at the middle of the year, the progress that the students are making. But I want you guys to, oh no, I'm sorry, Nathan, I'm a talker right now. If you look at grade 3 though, and you look at grade 4, already our kids are coming in at grade level and higher numbers. That is exciting for our future. Now, to sustain that is also the hard work as math gets more complex and as math becomes all the mini maths that we know by the time you get to 8th grade. There's a lot of work for us to do there. And I don't want to mention COVID, but I'm going to totally mention COVID, that for these kids in the 8th grade, we're talking about their 2nd grade year, foundational math being taught during COVID, that we can still see what is a potential bubble of data there, but we're not going to look backwards. We see a trajectory of growth that's really, it's really exciting. But there's still a ton of challenges just from this slide alone at what teachers are trying to grapple with, where their students are in all grades. So overall, we've got good news. We've got really good news. And I would love for Dana to come up here and tell you how she feels about this data, because she came from another school district. And when she looked at this, her feeling was like, this is awesome. This, where these kids are, this is fantastic. And I feel that too, but because I know how hard our teachers work and I know how our students want to be successful, my heart does hurt, because this is also hard to look at these and not see that 75% of our kids are there. Let's keep them there, you know, and then really be tenacious. We've got some really big gaps that we have to address, and that's hard, good work. And that is the hard news, that we're not where we want to be. And to encourage our teachers, but also be very real about the challenges ahead of getting all of our kids as far as we can. And we really believe that all of our kids can do good, hard work. So how to encourage and challenge at the same time. We do have questions though. I think we're going to take the position of curiosity. Our curiosity is, how complete is our data, right? Like, these are dipstick data pieces at the beginning of a year. So how much are our kids really at grade level? What is the true connection to OSAS? And our kids here could speak to OSAS. I'm sure it is in your memory of, at the end of learning after a whole year, OSAS is a longer test. It takes stamina and it takes patience. And sometimes at the end of the year, I really am not convinced that our kids have the best perspective of how much OSAS means to us and matters to us. And it's just another test to click through sometimes. I would love to hear your guys' opinion on that. And so also we have some questions about OSAS. How good is OSAS a measure of proficiency? And Andy, I hope you speak up to this too. Overall, as we improve our tier 1 instruction to address those gaps for kids who are barely a year below, maybe just 1 year below, that right there is very life-giving to us. That can move mountains for those kids to be at grade level. But for those that are multiple grade levels below, that's where our great challenge lies for this year. So that's where we're at in a nutshell. I said a lot of words. Do you guys have questions?
I have a question about some of the graphs, more of the waterfall graphs.
Yeah, yeah.
How is benchmark determined? Because it looks different per the schools. The
But-
dotted line, how's that?
Yeah. So if you'll notice, it's at the same spot for both. It's just that the populations are different. So it's spread out your numbers. So if you look, do you see what it's
yeah.
like distorting it? The dotted line at benchmark is the same. It's just distorted by the data set that you have per school.
Except 7th grade, it looks different.
Does
It's
it-
a little different in the printouts.
Like I'm looking at the 6th
Well,
grade.
that
this-
one's 1,050 and the left is under 1,000. So to
Just
me,
about
that's
800.
different.
I will get you an answer on that.
I think that one is marking the benchmark of the scaled score versus the percentile rank. So for all schools, the percentile rank benchmark is 40.
Mhm.
But I do believe it is different. The scaled score is a different benchmark per grade.
I'll have to look at it. The numbers are below, so you'll be able to see, but I don't know if it's, my eyeballs are not going to do that.
I can't zoom in.
Yeah. I will get back to you on if there is any variance, why that is.
It'd be good to know. Thank you.
Absolutely. And again, this is a new tool to us, so we're unpacking it as quickly as we can.
So I've been working in STAR for like 15 years, and I'm really, really excited that we're piloting it this year.
Yeah.
I think all data tools are data tools, and no data tool is going to be the end all be all, but I am really excited to see this middle school data. I think that having a reading data report that we can repeat multiple times per year and then have that after kiddos do it a few times, you can see that growth percentile for each kid too, which I think is super valuable. Because it's really powerful to see the kids that are maybe still in that yellow blue, but if we know they're making growth,
Exactly.
and it self-adjusts fairly well. So I'm really excited to see this happening at the middle school. One of the data points I'd like to call out is there's really consistent growth that you can see
Mhm.
for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I love seeing that green number get bigger as the years go on. I just think it's such a testament to the body of work that happens over multiple years when we get to have these kiddos and work with them over multiple years. So I'm really excited to see this data again, hopefully mid and end of year. 'Cause
Absolutely.
I think this real-time data, OSAS data is also super important, but it's just so hard when it comes to us so late. That
Mhm.
being able to give this data to families and to teachers real time is just so valuable, and I'm excited about it.
Holly, maybe give a little, what STAR gives our teachers access to more things?
Yeah, so I haven't even begun to dive into all of the tools that come with this diagnostic tool. So they have a bunch of supports. We thankfully have invested in 2 reading specialists, 1 at each middle school. And so for those kids who need additional support, they're definitely a grade level below. Then there's all of these tools that go in, and when it drills down specifically to a kid's area of need, it reinforces that growth with particular practices and particular work for the teacher to work with the student as they're gaining more what we call high dosage intervention for that kid with where they specifically are. So it's so new, and I would not be the human who could walk through all the tools with you, but our 2 reading specialists have already been utilizing this to meet the needs of their kids. So I'm excited to see when things start moving, and I believe they will. Yeah.
So one of the reports that you can get out of STAR is it links to your standards. So then when you're looking at a student's report, you get this little like lightning bolt next to whatever standard that kiddo might be low in. So it's super helpful for a teacher planning out these big lessons. And if you've got 3 or 4 kids that are kind of low in this one standard, you can shift your lessons and plan your lessons with some focus. I think it's a really empowering tool for teachers because they can really know exactly what they need to be working on. And I also think it's an empowering tool for parents because it makes that data digestible.
And right now that tool is only sitting with our reading specialists, which is why it was for free. So when it gets into the hands of our ELA teachers, it will be. But right now, it's been an amazing relationship for our reading specialists to go to our ELA teachers with that data and say, this is what will really move this standard for your kids in your classroom right now. So again, it's keeping it a very instructional focus conversation, but very fine-tuned to what the kids are showing that they need within each classroom. It's awesome.
I'm curious. So with like the literacy, let's say for K-5, when we're talking about at or above grade level, that's end of year.
Right. So they're on track.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they're on track. They're not necessarily meeting end of year. Okay.
Right.
Okay. I guess I'm interested in that. Like looking at the math then is how good are those projections?
That's a
Like, do we
great
find them
question.
reliable at the end of the year compared to beginning of the year that we've done so far?
So
This year's?
we're going to bring to you guys our OSAS in the next couple of meetings. I don't know
Mhm.
which one. And we'll look at what OSAS is showing us. But I think they're reliable enough. The hardest part, and we could talk about this in lots of different ways, the hardest part is that this is a click-through online diagnostic. And like anything else, depending on the kids' perception and working with this tool, we can get really, really accurate data. Maybe there's some flaws there. And also by the time that a kid's in 5th grade, they've done iReady for multiple years in a row. And so we're batting around having a tool that's great and reliable with users that might be getting fatigued. So how we get them to show up on that diagnostic is also really important. I feel like our teachers do a phenomenal job to have our kids take this seriously, to do their best so that we can get accurate measures. It's not the only tool that's out there. Star Renaissance also has a math diagnostic tool. It's something I'd like to look at. But as part of our math adoption, we had iReady as a tool that was built into that adoption process. So it just, again, data tools are not perfect.
Sure. I guess I'm just curious, like, so again, looking at the literacy,
Yeah.
other than kindergarten kids coming in at 26%, we have a lot of kids that are on track. And so we don't have a projection for those on here, do we? For end of year? Am I reading the math right? That
We can, but I didn't
Okay.
include it in this.
that's fine.
Yeah. You'll see it actually. There's reports that are linked to the bottom of these
Okay.
slides that are hyperlinked, and you'll be able to see what that projection means for proficiency. And there's goals of if we intervened, or if we focused on growth that are normal growth rate, what proficiency would look like. And then there's something called stretch goals. And we agree that the stretch goals are kind of Pollyanna a little bit. But at the same time, it's good to see
Mhm.
that with utilizing particular tools, we can see improvement. We're definitely bent on that approach in the classroom, that we're not just gonna, I hope you get this.
Sure.
We're gonna strategically go in and address gaps, but also in tier 1 instruction, that means for all kids, we're going to watch this progression or find what they need for different areas that they show they're not on track for proficiency.
Okay. Do we find similar progression between math and literacy?
That is not the same. So I would say overall, your kids are coming more literate at each grade level
Mhm.
than math literate.
Okay.
And we also see that is changing for math, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
But for everything that's 5th grade and higher, we still have a huge lag in our math scores versus our literacy scores.
Okay.
What you're asking.
And the one other thing I was curious about is essentially that middle school math range, do we find that it's because you're moving from more basic concepts to pre-algebra, algebra, that is part of why those projections start to slow down? Or is that more of a class grade level like we talked about with those kids were COVID kids in second grade? And so has it been that lag for certain groups, or is it really that seventh, eighth grade math jump?
Yeah, go ahead.
So what I would tell you as a middle school principal,
Mhm.
the eighth grade state test is actually a pretty large jump in intensity. And so it's been a challenge since the mid 2000s of we would have kids testing well in math, and then they would hit the eighth grade test, and it was traditionally a pretty intense ratcheting of expectations. And I don't say our scores are still at a place that we're not happy with. But as you look at them, I think the other thing to notice is that is a much more challenging test. Andy, who's online, probably has more experience with this. What are your thoughts about kind of the levels of challenge of these different grade level math tests?
Yeah, thanks, Holly, for walking us through, and I appreciate the conversation so far. I'm kind of keeping a list here of things I'd like to say. First of all, one thing that's really important, like the number one thing I want to say is STAR is not a literacy assessment. It's a reading assessment. That's very important because OSAS is assessing writing and listening and research. It's assessing a lot more than just STAR. So it might actually, we might see more alignment, Holly, in our scores if we look at the Claim 1 reading scores rather than our overall scores. I wonder if that's maybe something you could bring back to us in our next
Definitely.
meeting.
Yeah.
So the important thing to note there is students, when they take their OSAS score, are doing a couple of writing activities. They do a full write and they do a couple of brief writes that are not reading, right? So that's a big part of what we do in our language arts curriculum that we're sort of talking over. And I just want to point that out, that our teachers are doing a good job of teaching writing. We're just not measuring it in STAR in the same way that we are in
Yeah,
OSAS.
thanks
The
for
other thing I want to
clarifying.
say is these assessments are designed for different purposes, right? OSAS is a different test fundamentally than STAR is. And STAR's purpose is to be used throughout the year by teachers, by students, by families to diagnose, right? That's why it's called a diagnostic. It's designed to highlight students that may need a little bit more support in their journey to become fluent readers. And OSAS, of course, is an end of year test that is designed more for public accountability, right? It's a high level, it's broad brushstrokes instead of more fine detail. And, one of the questions that I have about the data that's presented is, overall data are shown, but how do our student groups, our focal student groups perform in these same things? How are our students that are receiving special education services performing? How are our multilingual learners performing? Right? That's something that we should also be able to keep a finger on the pulse of. And then regarding math, I think the thing I want to note is, like the literacy test, students they do a performance task that requires them to do a constructed response. And anytime students are constructing a response, that's a higher level of cognitive demand than primarily multiple choice items, right? So again, those assessments are different in the sense that part of what we're assessing in math is students' ability to communicate their mathematical reasoning. And that's really difficult to do through a multiple choice sort of click-through assessment. So I say that just to highlight that I'm glad to see that we're sort of seeing some level of alignment between these. I'm not surprised that we're not seeing more because those assessments are different. And so I always come back, and this was mentioned, and I appreciate it, Holly, that the purpose of data like this are to help us ask good questions and stay curious. And so how can we use all of those data to sort of get a clearer picture of how our students are performing in Newberg, both along the way throughout the school year in these diagnostics, but also at the end of the year, right? And we know, of course, that students' ability to stay focused and take an assessment right is part of its validity and reliability.
Yeah, thank you so much, because I didn't mean to skirt over or oversimplify, but I think that I did. So thank you for clarifying. These diagnostics are very, very simplistic, and not the direct connection to OSAS. I really appreciate that. What I'd like to bring you guys in the near future is our full local assessment plan, because then we can talk about our writing samples. We can talk about the interim assessments that we're making, our local assessments, because then that gives the full picture of how do we use the diagnostic information as our starting point, but how do we further deeper dive into where our kids are at specific to OSAS, potentially with our writing, with our science and math interim assessments, and with our speaking rubrics. So yeah, this is just, again, the quick dipstick at the start of the school year and what we're seeing, not our full arsenal of local assessments that we're going to be looking at to look at growth and progress and readiness to OSAS. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
I just say that I appreciate having the separation between end of year state test and what we're actually seeing during the year, because I think that it's good to have multiple ways of measuring this. So I really appreciate this, even if it's not a direct correlation to some other structured exam. So I appreciate you presenting this.
Absolutely.
One thing I wanted to mention is from a student's perspective, especially around 7th and 8th grade, students stop taking the state testing as seriously. And I feel like it's because they just don't think it's actually going to anything. I've noticed a lot of students just think it's just there. It's not actually going into any data sets. So I think it'd be important to help tell students more about what it's actually going to. Because a lot of people I knew around middle school and people who are still in middle school, they'll just skip through it because they just don't want to take it. But I think if we explain it more to the students about where it's actually going and the data sets and how it's going to affect their future learning, I think you'll get more accurate descriptions of their proficiencies.
I so appreciate that. Cole, looks like you want to say something too.
I can certainly speak to the fatigue that we were talking about a little bit earlier. It's a very different test than anything else we see in middle school, because it's a whole lot longer, and especially the OSAS one, it covers everything you've learned versus just each subject having their own test. And there's nothing in middle school that really prepares us for that kind of test. In high school, we start seeing more tests like that, the pre-ACT, the pre-SAT, or, some AP classes have tests like it. But in middle school, there's no way to really train yourself to prepare for that fatigue, to prepare for the longer test that's going to cover a bunch of things that you're going to be sitting around for a while. And I don't know if there's some way that we can do practice tests or something, but I know they would certainly have been helpful if I had build up tests, preparing myself to be sitting for a long period of time, talking about everything I've learned, up to that point in the school year.
Yeah. I heard you both. Show us why it matters. Help us prepare more precisely to what the experience is like. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that as well. There are practice tests that are available. And I think another thing here is that there is a real culture, right, around tests that are so far removed from students, right? So it's easier to sit for a test that is about what you have just learned, right? There's a recency effect to it. And you also have a relationship built with the teacher who's giving it, right? And so it's going to contribute to your grade. It's harder when you've got a test that is so far removed from your classroom learning, or seems so far removed from your classroom learning. And it's it's a culture issue as well. You know, I've worked with a lot of adults who don't feel like OSAS matters, who question its use, and so it's just to them it feels like an interruption from what they have come into teaching to do. And I don't know what that looks like in Newberg. I feel like that's an uphill battle there. And I will say that OSAS is quite a bit shorter than it used to be. So I hope that's helpful as we think about its purpose, right? Again, its purpose is to be looked at not at the student level, but aggregated together, right? How are our eighth graders doing? How are our eighth grade multilingual learners doing? How are our eighth grade special education students at Chehalem Valley doing, right? When we start to aggregate by these groups, we can start to see we shine lights, right, in the corners of our system, and we look for opportunities to improve. That's really its purpose. That's very different than a diagnostic or a classroom end of unit test, right? And so, I sort of grieve that, you all have to take as many tests as you do. And I hope that we can do a good job of making the purpose of those tests clear as we go through.
I'm curious for you too. So like with the start to not care, is it that this isn't graded, that it's not, doesn't affect your end of year things?
When I was taking them in middle school, I kind of knew it was for the data, so I still really tried, but a lot of people didn't know, especially that the 8th grade end of year one would affect what math they were placed into freshman year. So a lot of people I know were placed into general math because they just didn't try on the test and they would skip through it. So a lot of people just don't really know what it's for. And a lot of people also just don't care. It doesn't say anything about their actual learning, but they would just rather skip through it. They just don't want to put in the time, I feel, and they just don't see it as important at all.
Yeah, I can also agree that I was also aware that it was for the data, so I tried. But with it being the longer test that covers a lot, it starts to get to like the questions that you don't understand. And personally, when I would find those ones, I would spend time, trying to figure it out. And I'd have like the nagging voice, like, "Oh, I don't understand this, but I still want to try. I still want to figure it out." And it would end up wearing me down enough that it would get to a point like I don't even care anymore. Like I know this is for the data, but this has gone on for so long, and I've been so frustrated, and so I haven't succeeded at some of this stuff, so it's starting to pull me down. It's starting to like, okay, well, so what? I'm in the lighter math. I don't have to put as much effort in. I can kind of zone out.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Well, it looks like we have some work to do around promoting the reasons why these tests are important and how to prepare students, which is a conversation we had. I feel like we have this conversation every year.
Yep.
And a couple of years ago, the students reps sort of took that on as a project around promoting, and having some positive energy around that testing time. So that's something to consider too. But thanks for it's a really very robust conversation. Andy, very much appreciate your perspective and your work experience around all of this. So do we have any further comments or questions? Looks like we'll hear more in the future.
Yeah, especially, again, we'll bring back the OSAS results. Andy asked for by subgroup, so we'll also look at that. Also look at some comparisons between districts so you can understand how our district is performing versus other local districts. So we'll bring all of that back to you. We want to do the local assessment data first because I think it's the first data. It's been a little confusing, the release of the OSAS data, because it's still not up on the state website, although they said it was released almost 2 weeks ago. So we're still a little confused about where the state's at with its OSAS results, but that's kind of the plan, is to bring you that data next.
I will say that Westland and Corvallis shared their data already, so we won't get in trouble.
Well played.
Other thing I think would probably be a good idea for like middle school testing is, since it's a lot longer than what they're used to, maybe break it down into smaller sections. Since like in high school, we're kind of used to sitting down for a test for like an hour or two, but I think for middle schoolers, maybe break it down to like 40-minute sections instead and give them like a 15-minute break to go and chat around, so they're not just stuck in the mindset like, I'm so confused, I just want to end this now. But it might just give them a break to like collect their thoughts more and just prepare themselves to go back into it instead of just sitting there stressed out.
I just want to thank you both for your feedback. It's super helpful. And
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll chat about it more. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so let's move on to the bond work. Thanks, Jillian. Thanks, Holly.
Good evening, everybody. Gonna run into just some updates on the bond projects and where we've been. Oh, just forward and backward there. Okay, awesome. Thank you. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Introduce myself if I haven't met you already. My name is Ben Burkhardt. I'm the coordinator of operations for the school district. And I'm going to take you through just kind of overview of where we've been at with the finalizing and finishing of the bond work. I know there's been a lot more that has gone on. It was a giant project before I arrived on scene. But which one? Oh, big one. Perfect. Thank you. But just to give a little bit of an overview from where we were at the end of the bulk of the bond projects. You know, we discovered as we were going through all of these budgeting things that there was some funding out there from unused bond interest money. And then as bond projects were closing up, things that had been able to close down on projects and not have used all of the allocated money for that started to bring some opportunity for things that we might be able to continue to do. And so that was the discovery of that led us then to working with some board members that have been involved with the bond development, our bond management group and folks that had been a part of that, to develop those priorities of digging back into actually of projects that were left out there, priorities that hadn't been able to be attained through the main body of the bond work. But we were able to go back and review that and see where we wanted to go. So when we did that, we were able to highlight some priorities and target some specific areas, mainly things like building envelope, so like our roofs and our siding that were degraded and hadn't been addressed yet through the projects previously. Some HVAC upgrades and things for our heat and air that still had some big ticket items out there that were going to help make more comfortable, better spaces for our students. Safety concerns and some lighting things that are out there. Again, to continue to improve the spaces in our facilities and around the district. And that was something that was agreed upon in that group. And I know list that I'll come back to here in a minute that was brought to you all for some approval early on. We were able to move forward and get to work on those things. So from after we were able to do that, working with our bond project managers, beginning in that spring of 2025, last spring through this summer, we've been able to accomplish a great deal. There's been a lot of work that's been done, a lot of really great things that were able to happen. And almost all of the identified projects were completed. We had to defer and hold off on a few of those in order to be able to make space for some other things as we were running into some needs, I guess, as we got into other projects. But really a lot of work that I'll be able to show you here in a minute that's been able to be accomplished. Futuristically, there was that great deal that was that was done, but also still a little bit of residual left that, you know, we wanted to keep as like that safety net of like, we're going to have things that might come up in the future as far as maintenance concerns. There's conversations around computer replacements, curriculum purchasing, things that are going to benefit our district and as we move forward. Just as like show you some of the things that you see when you go around the district, you've probably already seen already. These are the kinds of things that when you're driving through, you can see, you know, CV and Antonia Crater got their exteriors painted, sealed, fixed up, looking sharp. The things that you don't get to see very readily, you know, big, heavy heat and air systems. But, you know, out at Ewing Young and in our auditorium and our arts building, just a couple of them that happen. Much more comfortable climates and things due to, you know, putting things like this up there. So it's been really good to improve in those spaces. Other things that you don't readily see, you know, unless you're flying over the top of it. We did a lot of work on some roofs. You know, our NHS buildings had a lot of places where there was some water leaking in. You might notice, you know, like the stained tiles and places on the ceilings that we've been trying to replace and work through. But in wings B, C, D, and G, and around A, and the entire surface of the main gym, we've been able to completely redo those areas. They had some inferior products up there that were really degraded and were going to continue to cause problems and allow things to get damaged. And so we were able to take care of that and create just a better place underneath them. Joan Austin got their new roof. The physical plant has got a new roof on it. So over there, we've got better places to keep our equipment, store things, just work on our projects and support the school district and our district office, having a new roof. And all of those places where this time, you know, last year when the rains come, I would get multiple calls every day about leaks coming in from places. I have gotten, I think, one, and it was on none of these buildings. So, you know, knock on wood, we're going to continue that trend. But yeah, things are sealed up better and looking bright. You know, the stadium lights were another project. And from what you can see there and what got a lot of positive feedback around that. And even on a point of the day where it's not incredibly dark outside, you can still see those lights are casting shadows. So where the old ones were reaching the end of their life, we've got some really bright skies out there for our sports field, which is really nice. But through that, this was the list of you know, that you guys have all, I believe, had seen in the past as far as the approved list, the priorities that we went through. It shows you the original list. We got to the estimated cost that we had originally looked at, and then the actual cost where things landed. And you can see almost all of what we had originally looked at and prioritized has been completed. All of those projects were able to get done over this last year. Some of those were held out due to the rising cost of some of the other projects. A lot of those increases were due to just discovery of some concerns inside the project, especially with our roof projects. You know, when you've got leaky things, water damages stuff, and when you start to dig into it, you're going to find damaged parts that need to be taken care of so we can do it properly. And that's where, when you look at the actual cost on some of those projects, that's where a lot of that comes from, is that once we got into the work, there was some things that needed to be addressed in order to do it right and get things properly fixed. And so we had to add on at that point to be able to do that. So not all flashy work that can be readily seen as you drive through the district, but all in all, it was very important work. Our buildings are drier, healthier, looking fresh, and just creating a better environment for our students to go to school in and our staff to work in. So in the end, it's going to be, these were great additions as we're wrapping up this bond era, and are going to help with all the future care and maintenance of our buildings and our facilities. But that's pretty much all I had for you tonight. It's just a quick overview of things.
Is there more of the presentation, or can I ask questions now?
But if you want to ask questions.
Yeah. So, and maybe, well, I'll make a comment first. So I live in the neighborhood of the high school. The light pollution is much better.
Awesome.
So, because my back porch can look right at the stadium. So I totally I love it. I do have a question about the stadium lights, and this is kind of oddball, so I apologize. So there's the downwards lights, but then on the main 4 poles, there's also upwards lights. So do you know what those are for? Are we supposed to put banners up at some point, and those are kind of supposed to highlight the banners?
I I actually I can't speak to that. I
Okay.
could definitely find out for you. Absolutely.
It's just very
I do
interesting.
know that there's some other additional things that are, I think, for some lighting as far as like performance kind of things, and that are being added into that are still actually in the mix.
Okay.
So although that project's done, there's a few things that are still tacking on here at the end. I can find out more details for you around what that actually is for.
It's very minor. I'm sure someday I'll see something happen. I was like, oh, that's what they're for. So
I also imagine, I mean, it's interesting the way those lights work because like you mentioned, light pollution.
Mhm.
When you look at them, I think that they're much more designed to put light where you want it. And,
Oh, yeah.
And, keep light out of places where you don't, right? So I think a lot of it could just have to do with the engineering around that.
Very cool. My main question though was that's a great slide to show what was done, what was the actual cost. What's our nest egg?
Good segue.
Okay.
Good segue, yeah.
Before we segue, gym roof, do we feel like this solution's the one that's going to work? And we can pull the buckets out of the ceiling?
The
and-
buckets have been removed.
Okay.
They have been removed. Yeah. They were great advertising for Ace Hardware, but yeah, they've been removed. That roof is completely replaced. It was rebuilt in those layers right underneath it. There's better insulation in there now. Yeah, I mean it should be, it was done right. It should be good.
And I feel like, again, Joanne Austin's roof, while not 50 years old, was definitely needing, and I feel like this was done well and should last us what that warranty is. So I just
Yeah.
want to call out a lot of the roof work was very important for us this summer.
Yeah, and I could say what I maybe should have done also is put a before and after on some of these. Because if you walked those roofs, especially on the high school areas around there, the type of roofing that was on there was different. It almost looked like a waffly tarp. Like, so there was wrinkles in it. There was places where you could even see it was going to start to shred apart. It was just a bad material for what was up there. What's on those roofs now is a different material. It's a different type of roof. All in all, a massive improvement for keeping the water out.
All right. What's left? Well, first I just wanted to go over that. Yes, there is money left, but how we can use it is we have to be specific. It has to match the language that was in the original bond. So before any project gets approved to use the interest or residual dollars there, it has to either increase health, safety, and security, update or upgrade classrooms, update or upgrade technology, update or upgrade schools and facilities, or invest in classroom or education programs. So those has to meet one of those 5 criteria. So before even project gets the green light, we review it for that at the cabinet level. And we have right now we're still spending money on some of these projects that are just going through. We have about 3 million left. And so I just used the flashy slide that Ben had. I liked 5 categories. So we got classroom, we got money set aside for classrooms, energy efficiency, capital project repairs, some planning for next time. We haven't decided on amount, but we do need to keep money for future analysis for bond planning and getting information about what's necessary. And then we have a plan for tech infrastructure as well. And that's replacing like Chromebooks and laptops or internal stuff like in the server rooms and connections, things like that. And so on the classroom side, just this year, oops, I didn't total it up. Anyways, we have a little over $500,000 we've set aside just for curriculum alone. And that has been able to help us fill a big need in our budget side of things as far as replacing, I don't know, Holly or Jillian, it was like we had some stuff that was like 10, 12 years old that we need to replace curriculum wise. And so, anyways, we have that. And then next year we have another 600,000 set aside to continue to update our curriculum in the schools. And so the goal is for all this leftover money is to have it last 5 years. That's the goal, to help us bridge a gap that we have in our general fund budget too. On the energy efficiency side, we've worked with Oregon Department of Energy, Energy Trust of Oregon to identify an LED retrofit project or projects multiple. So this year we set aside a little over $400,000 towards that project. And that also ties in with our Senate Bill 1149 money, which is when we have projects that are eligible, we get repayments from the public purpose charge. So that one utilizes Senate Bill 1149, Energy Trust of Oregon rebates, and then some of this bond money. So it's to use Jillian's word, a braided project. And then based on the the quotes came in really expensive this year on that one, but we're projecting probably about $300,000 more to finish all the schools starting next year on that project. But we're starting slow on that one, but that's going. So we have some in the Pike. We have some athletic facility repairs that are upcoming. We know there's going to be things we didn't plan for, and so we're going to be conservative on that. And this is also going to be a resource that we identify as we create our long-term facilities plan as well. Again, planning ahead, we need to retain a balance enough to engage consultants for capital assessments and pre-bond planning services at some point. And then I was going to bring the chart, but I couldn't find it today, that shows when that next bond is, as far as the debt service goes. When it drops is what we look for, adding that back in again. And we also, on the safety security side, we did use these funds to update our volunteer and visitor tracking system and equipment at the elementary schools. So that was something we did this year. On the tech side, we've invested in Chromebooks, laptops, MacBooks, iPads, server and connection hardware, and some software license costs, which fits in with the narrative of that as well. We have a little over 400,000 that we budgeted this year for that. And then next year, it's about we have budgeted a little over 300,000 for that as well. And again, we're looking at a 5-year plan. And what's interesting about the tech one is that we're going to try and fit some tech replacement back into general fund, and this is going to help. We're going to try and whittle down on using this bond interest to try and push it back into the general fund. But this allows us to have that kind of glide path, I guess, for fitting that back in. And the same idea with curriculum as well. Oh, that's the last one I had. Thought we had one with our name on it, but that's okay. So yeah, so about 3 million. That spends really fast, let me tell you. That sounds like a lot of money, but when we talk about, 700-800, well, it'll be more for that over a 5-year period for tech, and then a little over $1 million for curriculum already. That'll go nice and fast. So.
Well, I appreciate the update on what your plan is. It's probably not going to be a popular comment I'm going to make, but at least from my understanding, we can't use the money for curriculum because we didn't do it 2 years ago. So why do we do it now?
So one of the 5 categories was investing in classrooms or educational programs. And so that's where the curriculum fits in and that's in the bond ballot title as well. And so we got counsel, we got information from bond counsel just to verify. And we went through the bond language with her, and she said you tie it to the bond language, and then someone has a fight, they're fighting against what the folks voted for. So that was, and I'm summarizing, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Ben or Ethan? Ben, thank you for, carrying this out. The roof, just the roof on the high school alone is a huge improvement and will make everybody feel much better being in that building. Anything else for these? Okay, thank you very much. Oh, there
Sorry,
you go.
I wanted
Oh,
to second about the roof. I haven't noticed anything about it, which means it's doing a really great job. Last year, I can remember I'd see 5 or 6 buckets every day sitting on the ground with towels around them. I remember basketball practices, we'd be running around a trash can in the middle of the court because the roof is leaking. So either it was that or the floor would be slippery. So it is so much better.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Nathan, you want to talk to us about the budget calendar?
We brought this to you guys last week for review, or last board meeting for review. And then cleaned up a date on May 19th and have today's date on October 14th. But otherwise, it's unchanged from what we brought last year. So if you guys approve of this schedule, we'll move forward with it.
I move that the Newberg Dundee Public Schools Board of Directors approve the 2025-2026 budget calendar for the 2026-2027 budget as presented.
Second.
Any further questions? Andy, do you have any questions out there? You still with us?
No, thank you.
Okay. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Andy, I didn't hear you, but I presume you said aye. Did you say aye?
I did say aye, and I'll say it
Okay.
again. Aye.
Well, there you go. Thank you. Then motion carries all in favor, 6-0. Great. Well, that is the main part of the board. Now we can move on to student rep comments and all of our comments. Do you guys want to start first? So you can.
I don't really have any comments, but I've noticed also the roofs are much better. I've also just noticed this school year, everything's running a lot smoother than past years. I've seen a lot of improvements with students' education. I'm also pretty happy with the personal electronic device policy. A lot of students really don't like it, but I think it's really good for the students. Maybe not during lunches, but in total, like I think it's really beneficial for the students.
Yeah, I can absolutely second the smoother school year. It has certainly been less eventful. It's been mostly academic. Just an update on kind of music programs and how they're going. The orchestra and band programs had a playathon on Friday, so we were at the school from 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening. We did clinics, we did some team building exercises. We were playing a lot. It was amazing. It was great for our groups. We learned so much. We had lots, I think it was 23 clinicians we had come in from as far as Kansas, I believe. So it was amazing to have these professionals come and work with us. We learned a lot. I know that the middle school orchestra concert was last night, I believe. That went very well. I know that the jazz band concert is tonight. I don't know what time it started, but that's tonight. Hopefully that'll be going well. But yeah.
The only thing I guess I would say is got the pleasure to be part of the boundary committee a couple weeks ago. I think that was a really good start. There was a lot of really good conversation in the different groups, and really hopeful and excited for the work that's going to be done there. So that's all.
I got a chance to go help out at the Jag Jog at Joanne Austin last week, which is always just a blast to see all the kids hustling around that track over there. And yeah, very excited for these conferences coming up and see how everything goes with the split days.
I too am looking forward to conferences. I know that middle school principals and high school, I assume I only get the middle school ones, but have been communicating a lot about the change in calendar. So hopefully all of our families are up to date on that. I just think fall conferences are such an important piece of the puzzle. So I hope that families are able to find a time that works for them to connect with your students, teachers, and I hope that the teachers can feel how much we as a families appreciate their time and their insight and just that opportunity to sit down. I know there are a lot of parent groups that are helping to feed our teachers and keep them comfortable for their extended hours. So I appreciate all of that work. I too got to hang out at the Mountain View Mud Run and the Edwards Jogathon, both just wonderful events that are just so awesome for our school. So I just appreciate all the people who put in their work there, and wishing everyone well for these conferences. Hopefully we can keep working together, parents and teachers, to keep our students going on the right track.
I'd like to start off by thanking you guys for the chairs. They're amazing. I don't feel awkward about making too much noise or falling out of it or something. And then Cole, I got to see you perform at the Night of the Cultural Center, Night of the Moon. That was really awesome. Yeah, so it was really fun to see you up there. So great job. I think tomorrow is the day I'm heading out to Dundee Elementary School for the hobbies. It's such a fun event. Thanks to Jen Schneider for inviting us. And I really appreciate all the invitations that teachers and the music folks and everybody's sending to us to remind us about what's happening, because that's it is probably the easiest way for us to really know about all the cool things happening in the schools. So those are really great. So that's it.
Yeah, it was part of the boundary or community meet, whatever the heck that's called. It was a good meeting, good kickoff. Definitely looking forward to more. And I know Dave wants to share it with a lot of people, which they should, but definitely looking forward to other opportunities to sit in there and collaborate. What else? Did make it to the middle school, high school choir concert, and I too saw Cole on a very much kind of a solo accompaniment to the choir, which is awesome. Very, very nice violin or viola? Violin player, so good job. And then I guess just a discussion item, and if we don't want to do it now, great, we can do it later. But I think we need to work with Nathan and talk about kind of what the focus of the finance committee can or should be this year. So I think there's a little confusion on who takes lead or not on that, and so I know me and him have emailed back and forth a little bit about it. So, but ultimately, what I felt from last year is that it was kind of driven more from this board, kind of given the direction. So I think we might need to have a discussion about that a little bit more. So.
Okay, so maybe we could talk about that at the October 28th meeting. Put it
That's
on
fine.
the agenda.
That's fine. So yeah. Other than that, lots of great sports events. Nice to beat Mac in football like we did. Yeah, so looking forward to maybe some postseason for football again this year. So
So
that's
I'm gonna invite Andy, do you have any comment before we move to Dave?
Yeah, thank you. I want to echo the invitation for families to take advantage of conferences this week. That's such an important partnership between school and teacher and family and student. And also want to shout out all of the schools who have done a fall event for like a fun run or a jogathon or a mud run that have raised funds for the year. I know from previous experience that in the Mountain View parent group that funded a lot of amazing projects and opportunities for students throughout the year. And so thanks to all the parents who are doing that work. And then not to over highlight our performing arts groups, but we're at that time of the year where everyone has been able to get enough playing time together. We've been able to have some concerts. We're about to have a drama production at the high school as well. I just encourage our community to come out and see how amazing the youth of our community are.
Thank you, Andy.
So yeah, we did hold our first boundary committee meeting. We're holding this boundary committee to gather feedback on a specific math problem that we have. The math problem that's creating the problems for us at 4 of our 6 elementaries is that we're averaging only 1 or 2 sections per grade level. And because of that, it creates a specific problem. Let's say that I have 18 students in one class in a grade level and 18 in the other, and only 2 sections. That's too low. And normally I would cut a section to raise that class size. But with only 1 or 2 sections, when you cut a section, I now go to a class size of 18 and 18, 36. And that's way too high. And so this is the math problem that we're trying to work on is that somehow we need to figure out how to get more sections per grade level in more of our elementary schools. Doing this helps us become more financially sustainable. With money for education, both federally and state, becoming tighter, this is going to be important for us over the next couple of years for us to continue to become financially sustainable. This committee is basically tasked with examining possible solutions and then making recommendations. We will take those recommendations and we'll out to our community, we'll get feedback on them before we bring them back to the board, because we're not trying to do this quickly or not in a not transparent way. We're trying to be transparent about this. For the record, we're very happy with our schools and our programs. Our goal here isn't to mess that up, but we do have a math problem that we have to try and find some solutions for. And to find those solutions without blowing up all of the programs that we already like. And our schools are doing well. I can tell you, as I'm looking at the OSAS results versus other districts, our district is performing well. We're not where we want to be, but we're still performing well. So that's kind of our goal with this thing. We're already working on the second meeting's agenda and the third. We've met with the city. We now have a data sharing agreement. So we now have, they're producing kind of a GIS model so we can begin to play with boundaries and see if that solves our boundary problems, our math problem. And we're also looking at what other districts do, what other structures are out there that may help us with this problem. So that's kind of where we're at. The first meeting, I will say, I felt very collaborative and people were learning what the issues are. We'll do more of that in the coming meetings. The third meeting in November will probably be where we start getting some scenarios and some more specific data about solutions. Just looking at our agenda for the second one, we're still kind of getting questions from the community and then trying to present data around what the problem is. But so far so good. So it was like I said, it was very collaborative space and very solution kind of oriented. That's it.
Well, we're going to be coming in just at 7:30. Just want to remind folks that October 28th is our next meeting, and that will be at Catalyst High School on our little board on the road. And so I'll call the meeting adjourned at whatever time this is. 7:28. Everybody have a great evening.
Thanks all.